Welcome, dear listener, to Sleepless Survivors. Tonight, we invite you to drift into peaceful slumber as we explore one of humanity's most enigmatic mysteries, the tale of the Anunnaki, ancient gods from the stars, architects of civilization, or perhaps something else entirely. Let your body relax, let your mind wander. As we journey together through time back to the very dawn of human history, where myths and reality blur into dreams. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let us begin. In the beginning there was Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, flowing through what we now call Iraq. This was the cradle of civilization, where humanity first built cities, first wrote laws, first gazed at the stars and wondered about their place in the cosmos. The ancient Sumerians lived here, 5,000 years ago, perhaps even longer. They created something remarkable, a society of unprecedented complexity, temples that touched the sky, writing systems that recorded their thoughts, mathematics that calculated the movements of celestial bodies with stunning accuracy. But the Sumerians claimed they did not do this alone. They spoke of beings who came before, teachers, gods, the Anunnaki. The word Anunnaki means those who from heaven came to earth. In Sumerian, Anu referred to the sky. Ki meant earth. The Anunnaki were the children of Anu, the sky god, the father of gods, ruler of the heavens. According to Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki were a pantheon of deities, powerful beings who shaped the world, who controlled the elements, who decided the fates of mortals. They were not distant, abstract gods. They walked among humans. They had needs, desires, conflicts. They were in many ways remarkably human. Let yourself sink deeper into comfort. Feel the weight of your body against the bed as we explore these ancient stories. These whispers from the dawn of time. The Sumerians left behind thousands of clay tablets, written in cuneiform script, wedge-shaped marks pressed into wet clay. These tablets survived millennia, baked hard by the desert sun, protected by the sands that buried them. When archaeologists first deciphered these texts in the 19th century, they discovered something unexpected. Not just records of grain harvests and property transactions, but epic poems, creation myths, stories of gods and heroes. And at the centre of it all, the Anunnaki. The most famous of these texts is the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic. It tells of how the universe began, how order emerged from chaos, how the gods themselves came into being. In the beginning, there was only Apsu, the primordial fresh water, and Tiamat, the saltwater ocean. They mingled together, and from their union came the first gods. But these younger gods were noisy, chaotic. They disturbed Apsu's rest. Apsu decided to destroy them. But the god Enki, wise and clever, learned of this plan. He cast a spell that put Apsu into a deep sleep. Then Enki killed him, taking his power, his authority, his place. Tiamat, enraged by the death of her consort, created monsters to avenge him, an army of horrors. But the young god Marduk rose to challenge her, armed with winds and storms and lightning. He offered to fight Tiamat, but only if the other gods made him their king. They agreed, and Marduk went to battle. He caught Tiamat in his net. He sent winds into her mouth to distend her belly. Then he shot an arrow through her heart. He split her body in two. From one half he made the sky, from the other the earth, and from this act of divine violence the world was born. But Marduk did not stop there. He took the blood of Tiamat's general, Kingu, and mixed it with clay. From this mixture he created humanity, to serve the gods, to do the work the gods no longer wished to do themselves. This is the story the ancient Babylonians told, but the Sumerians, who came before them, had their own versions, their own understanding of how the Anunnaki came to be, and why they created humankind. Let your breathing slow, in and out, steady and calm. As we delve deeper into these ancient mysteries, the Sumerian king list is one of the most fascinating documents from the ancient world. It lists every king who ruled over Sumer, starting from the very beginning, before the Great Flood. But here is where it becomes strange. The first kings, according to this list, ruled for impossibly long periods, not decades, not even centuries, but tens of thousands of years. One king supposedly ruled for 43,200 years, another for 36,000 years. These antediluvian kings, the list says, were chosen by the gods, by the Anunnaki themselves. They were the intermediaries between heaven and earth, part human, part divine. Then came the flood, the great deluge that nearly destroyed all life, and after the flood the lengths of rains became more reasonable, more human, as if something fundamental had changed. What are we to make of these numbers, these impossible spans of time? Were they symbolic, errors in translation, or do they point to something we do not yet understand? The Sumerians themselves seem to take them literally. They believed their earliest rulers lived in an age when gods and mortals mingled freely, when the boundaries between the divine and the mundane were thin, when the Anunnaki walked the earth as easily as they dwelt in heaven. Enki was one of the most important of the Anunnaki, god of wisdom, of fresh water, of crafts and creation. He was often depicted as a bearded figure, water flowing from his shoulders, fish swimming around him. He was the lord of the Abzu, the underground ocean of fresh water that the Sumerians believed fed all wells and springs. Enki was a trickster, clever, mischievous, benevolent toward humanity. It was Enki who warned the hero Ziusudra about the coming flood, telling him to build a boat to save himself and the animals. This story, of course, has echoes in many traditions, most famously in the biblical tale of Noah. But in the Sumerian version, Enki acts against the will of the other gods, particularly his brother Enlil. Enlil was the lord of the air, the wind, the storm. He was more powerful than Enki in the divine hierarchy, commander of the Anunnaki, he who decreed the fates. Where Enki was benevolent toward humans, Enlil was often harsh, demanding, quick to anger. It was Enlil who decided humanity had become too numerous, too noisy, a plague upon the earth. And it was Enlil who convinced the other Anunnaki to send the flood, to wipe out humanity and start again. This conflict between Enki and Enlil runs through many Sumerian texts. Two brothers, two different attitudes toward the beings they had created. Enki the protector, Enlil the judge. Think of them as you drift. Two aspects of the divine, mercy and justice, wisdom and power, forever in tension, forever in balance. The creation of humanity, according to Sumerian myth, was an act of necessity. The Anunnaki had grown tired of toiling, of digging canals, of tilling fields, of mining the earth for precious metals. They needed workers, servants. The goddess Ninhursag, also called Ninmah, was tasked with this creation. She was the mother goddess, the lady of the mountains. With Enki's help, she mixed clay with the blood of a sacrificed god, and from this mixture she formed the first humans. But the early attempts were flawed. The texts describe beings who were malformed, incomplete, too weak, too strong, unable to function properly. Enki and Ninhursag experimented, adjusted, refined their creation. Finally they succeeded. They created humans who could work, who could serve, who could worship the gods and provide them with offerings. This story might seem strange to us, unsettling even. Gods creating humans to be labourers, slaves, essentially. But to the ancient Sumerians it made perfect sense. It explained why life was hard, why humans had to work. It was their purpose, their reason for existing. And yet, despite this servile origin, the Sumerians also believed humans had dignity, value. The gods cared about them, guided them, gave them laws and wisdom. The relationship was complex, not simply master and slave, but something more nuanced, more reciprocal. Let your muscles relax, starting with your toes. Feel the tension leaving your feet, your calves, your thighs, moving up through your body, your stomach, your chest, your shoulders, your arms, your neck, your face, all tension melting away. As we continue our journey through ancient myths, the city of Eridu was the first city, according to Sumerian tradition, built on the edge of the marshes where the rivers met the sea. It was the seat of Enki. His temple, the Abzu, was the most sacred structure in Sumer. Archaeologists have excavated Eridu. They found layers upon layers of temples, each built on top of the previous one, stretching back 6,000 years or more, the oldest. Structures are simple, humble, but each successive temple grew more elaborate, more complex, as if tracking the evolution of civilization itself. The Sumerians believed Eridu existed before the flood. that it was the first place where kingship descended from heaven, where the Anunnaki first taught humans the arts of civilization. From Eridu, the knowledge spread. Other cities rose: Uruk, Ur, Lagash, Nippur, each with its own patron deity, each a centre of learning and culture and worship. Uruk was the city of Inanna, the goddess of love and war, of sex and violence. She was perhaps the most complex of all the Anunnaki, beautiful and terrible, compassionate and cruel. She descended to the underworld and returned. She rejected the advances of Gilgamesh himself. She was worshipped with sacred prostitution and revered as the morning and evening star. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest stories ever written, is set in Uruk. Gilgamesh was a king, 2/3 god, 1/3 human. He was mighty, arrogant. He oppressed his people until the gods created Enkidu to challenge him. Enkidu was a wild man, raised by animals, living in the wilderness, but through the seduction of a temple priestess he became civilized. He journeyed to Uruk, he fought Gilgamesh, and they became the closest of friends. Together, Gilgamesh and Enkidu had adventures. They travelled to the cedar forest and killed its guardian, the monster Humbaba. They slew the bull of heaven sent by Inanna to punish Gilgamesh for rejecting her. But the gods were angry at these acts. They decided one of the heroes must die. They chose Enkidu. He fell ill, and despite Gilgamesh's grief and prayers, Enkidu died. Gilgamesh was devastated, confronted with his own mortality. He set out on a quest to find immortality. To escape death, he journeyed to the edge of the world. He crossed the waters of death. He found Utnapishtim, the Sumerian Noah, who had survived the flood and been granted eternal life by the gods. Utnapishtim told Gilgamesh that immortality was not meant for mortals, that death was part of the human condition, but he offered Gilgamesh a chance, a test. Stay awake for 7 days and 7 nights, prove your strength, your worthiness. Gilgamesh failed. He fell asleep almost immediately. When he awoke, he realized the truth. Immortality was beyond his reach. All he could do was return home, embrace his mortality, rule wisely, and be remembered. The Epic of Gilgamesh is not just an adventure story. It is a meditation on death, on friendship, on what it means to be human in a world created by gods. Let these ancient words wash over you. Let them carry you towards sleep. The Anunnaki were not always united. The texts describe conflicts among them, power struggles, jealousies, wars. In one text, called the Myth of Zu, a lesser god named Anzu steals the Tablet of Destinies from Enlil. This tablet contains the fates of all things. Whoever possesses it has ultimate power over the universe. With the tablet, Anzu flees to the mountains. The Anunnaki are thrown into chaos. Without the tablet, Enlil cannot maintain order. The younger gods are called upon to retrieve it, but they are afraid. Anzu has become too powerful. Finally, the god Ninurta volunteers. He is the god of war, of hunting, the champion of the Anunnaki. Armed with magical weapons, Ninurta hunts Anzu. They battle across the sky. Arrows and winds and lightning clash. Eventually, Ninurta prevails. He defeats Anzu, retrieves the tablet, returns it to Enlil. Order is restored. The fates return to their proper course. This story illustrates an important aspect of Anunnaki mythology. Power was not absolute. It could be challenged, stolen. Even the gods were subject to forces beyond their control. The Tablet of Destinies represented cosmic law, fate itself, and without it, even the King of Gods was vulnerable. Breathe in slowly, hold for a moment, breathe out. Feel yourself sinking deeper into relaxation, deeper into comfort, as the stories continue. The Anunnaki had a complex hierarchy. At the top was Anu, the father of gods. He dwelt in the highest heaven, remote, distant, rarely intervening directly in earthly affairs. He was the source of divine authority, but he delegated power to his children. Below Anu came the great gods, Enlil, Enki, Ninhursag, Inanna. These were the rulers, the decision-makers. They met in council to determine the fate of the world. Below them were the Igigi, sometimes described as younger gods, sometimes as servants of the Anunnaki. The texts are not always clear on the distinction, but in some stories the Igigi are the gods who originally did the hard labour, digging the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, toiling for the great Anunnaki. Eventually, the Igigi rebelled. They burned their tools. They marched to Enlil's temple and demanded relief. This rebellion is what prompted the creation of humans, to take over the work the Igigi refused to do. It is a strange echo, gods creating servants because their own servants rebelled. It speaks to a world view where hierarchy was natural, expected, but also where rebellion was possible, where the burden of labour was something even gods tried to avoid. The Anunnaki also had a connection to the underworld, the realm of the dead, called Kur in Sumerian, or Irkala. It was ruled by Ereshkigal, Inanna's sister, a dark goddess, powerful, feared. The underworld was not a place of punishment exactly, not like the later concepts of hell. It was simply where the dead went, a shadowy existence, eating dust, drinking muddy water, forgotten by the living. Inanna's descent to the underworld is one of the most powerful myths. She journeyed there, passing through 7 gates. At each gate she was forced to remove a piece of clothing or jewellery. By the time she reached Ereshkigal's throne, she was naked, vulnerable, mortal. Ereshkigal killed her, hung her corpse on a hook, but Enki, ever the clever one, sent 2 creatures to rescue her. They brought the food and water of life. They revived Inanna. But the laws of the underworld required a substitute, someone to take her place. Inanna returned to the surface. She found her husband Dumuzi sitting on her throne, not mourning, not showing proper respect. Enraged, she declared he would take her place in the underworld, and so Dumuzi was dragged down to Kur, to spend half the year in darkness. His sister Geshtinanna volunteered to share his fate, taking turns, 6 months each. This myth explains the seasons, the cycle of growth and decay, life and death. It shows the Anunnaki as being subject to natural law. Even gods must pay a price. Even gods die, in a sense, and are reborn. Let your mind drift, like a leaf on water, gently floating. No effort, no strain, just peaceful movement towards sleep. The Anunnaki were associated with specific celestial bodies. Anu with the North Star, Enlil with the constellation we call Orion, Enki with the southern stars, Inanna with the planet Venus. The Sumerians were sophisticated astronomers. They tracked the movements of the sun, moon and planets with remarkable precision. They developed a lunar calendar. They identified the zodiac. They calculated the length of the year, and they believed the stars were divine, that the movements of celestial bodies reflected the will of the Anunnaki. Astrology was not superstition to them. It was science, a way of reading the intentions of the gods. Temples often included ziggurats, massive stepped pyramids. These were not tombs like the Egyptian pyramids. They were stairways to heaven, places where priests could ascend, where they could communicate with the gods, where earth and sky met. The most famous ziggurat was in Babylon, the Atemenanki, the Temple of Marduk. Ancient sources describe it as a towering structure, 7 tiers, each a different colour, rising 300 feet into the sky. This may have been the inspiration for the biblical Tower of Babel, the story of humans trying to build a tower to reach heaven, and God confusing their languages, scattering them across the earth. But in the Sumerian understanding, ziggurats were not acts of hubris. They were proper worship. The gods wanted these temples. They desired to be honoured, to be accessible. The ziggurat was an invitation, a meeting place between mortal and divine. Now we come to the modern interpretations, the theories that have emerged in recent decades, the ideas that have captured popular imagination. In 1976, a writer named Zecharia Sitchin published a book called The 12th Planet. In it, he presented a radical reinterpretation of Sumerian texts. He argued that the Anunnaki were not gods at all. They were extraterrestrials, advanced beings from another world. According to Sitchin, there is a planet in our solar system we have not yet discovered. He called it Nibiru. It has an elliptical orbit, taking thousands of years to complete one revolution around the Sun. This planet was the home of the Anunnaki. Sitchin claimed that about 450,000 years ago the Anunnaki came to Earth. They were searching for gold, which they needed to repair their planet's atmosphere. They established bases in Mesopotamia and Africa. They began mining operations, but mining was hard work. The Anunnaki grew tired. They needed labourers. So they took an existing hominid species, Homo erectus, and genetically modified it, creating Homo sapiens, modern humans, not through millions of years of evolution, but through deliberate genetic engineering. This, Sitchin argued, explains the sudden leap in human development. the rapid emergence of civilization in Sumer, the inexplicable knowledge of astronomy and mathematics. It was not humans who developed these things, it was the Anunnaki who taught them. Sitchin's theories were based on his own translations of Sumerian texts. He claimed mainstream scholars had misunderstood, that they were too literal, too conservative. He saw hidden meanings, scientific knowledge encoded in myth. For instance, the Enuma Elish creation story. Sitchin interpreted this not as mythology, but as a description of the formation of the solar system. Tiamat was not a goddess, but a planet. Marduk was not a god, but another planet. The battle between them was a cosmic collision, and from the destroyed planet Tiamat came the asteroid belt and Earth. Let your body rest completely, every muscle loose, every thought quiet. As we explore these modern myths built upon ancient ones, Sitchin's ideas were revolutionary, controversial. Most scholars rejected them outright. Professional Assyriologists and Sumerologists criticized his translations. They pointed out errors, misunderstandings of grammar, incorrect readings of cuneiform, context ignored. But Sitchin's books became bestsellers. Millions of copies sold. They inspired a whole genre of ancient astronaut theories, television shows, documentaries, websites, an entire subculture devoted to the idea that aliens visited Earth in antiquity, that they shaped human civilization, that they might return. Why did these ideas resonate so strongly? Perhaps because they offer answers, simple explanations for complex questions. How did ancient people build such impressive structures? Aliens helped them. Why did civilization emerge so suddenly? Aliens taught them. What is the origin of religion? Memories of alien visitors interpreted as gods. These theories also tap into something deeper. A longing, a desire to believe we're not alone, that we are part of a larger cosmic story, that our existence has meaning beyond this small planet. And there is something appealing about the idea that we were created for a purpose, even if that purpose was to mine gold for extraterrestrials. It gives humans a special place, a significance. But scholars argue these theories do a disservice to ancient peoples. They assume primitive humans were incapable of ingenuity, of innovation, of building complex societies on their own. They deny the real accomplishments of our ancestors. The truth is probably more mundane and more amazing. Humans, through trial and error, through accumulated knowledge passed down generations, through cooperation and creativity, built civilization. Without alien intervention, it was messy, slow, full of setbacks, but it was ours. Still, the ancient astronaut theories persist, and they have become entangled with the actual Sumerian texts, creating confusion about what the ancients actually believed versus what modern interpreters claim they believed. Let us return to what the texts actually say, setting aside speculation, looking at the stories as the Sumerians told them. The Atrahasis epic is another crucial text. It tells a more complete version of the flood story and the creation of humanity. It begins with the Igigi gods labouring, digging rivers, carrying baskets. The work is endless, exhausting. For 40 years they toil, until finally they rebel. They surround Enlil's house, threatening violence, demanding relief. Enlil calls a council of the great Anunnaki. What should be done? The Igigi cannot be forced, but the work must continue. Enki proposes a solution. Create a new being, a Lulu, a primitive worker. Mix clay with the flesh and blood of a slain god. Create something that can work but is not divine. The goddess Nintu, another name for Ninhursag, performs the creation, with Enki's guidance. 7 males and 7 females, the first humans. The text describes the process in surprising detail. The clay is prepared, the blood is added, incantations are spoken. Birth goddesses help with the final stage. It takes months, like a pregnancy. And when it is done, humans emerge, capable of thought, of work, of reproduction. They multiply, they spread across the earth. They do the work the Igigi refused. Time passes, humans grow numerous. Their noise disturbs Enlil. He sends plagues to reduce their population, but they survive. He sends drought, but Enki teaches them to dig wells. He sends famine, but again they endure. Finally, Enlil decides on a final solution, a great flood, to wipe out humanity completely. But Enki, loyal to his creations, warns Atrahasis, the wisest of men. He tells him to build a boat, make it waterproof with bitumen, load it with animals and supplies, Prepare for a deluge that will cover the world. Atrahasis obeys. He builds the boat. The flood comes. For 7 days and 7 nights, rain pours from the sky. The rivers overflow. The oceans rise. Everything on land dies. When the waters recede, Atrahasis emerges. He offers sacrifices to the gods. The Anunnaki, starving because humans were no longer providing offerings, gather around the smoke like flies. They realize their mistake. They need humans. Enlil is still angry that Eni survived, but Enki defends his action. A compromise is reached. Humans can continue to exist, but their numbers will be limited through natural death, through disease, through barrenness. The balance will be maintained. This story is remarkably similar to the biblical flood narrative, but it was written more than 1,000 years earlier. It influenced the Hebrew Bible. The Epic of Gilgamesh also contains a flood story, told by Utnapishtim to Gilgamesh. These parallel stories show how myths travelled, how cultures influenced each other, how ancient peoples shared ideas about divine justice and human mortality. Close your eyes, if they are not already closed. Feel the darkness behind your eyelids, soft, comforting, like falling into a warm embrace. The Anunnaki, in these texts, are not all powerful. They make mistakes. They argue. They act out of petty emotions, jealousy, anger, frustration. This is different from later monotheistic conceptions of God, an omniscient, omnipotent, perfectly good deity. The Anunnaki were more like the Greek gods, powerful but flawed, immortal but not invulnerable. They could be wounded. In some texts they bleed. They eat and drink. They have sexual relationships, with each other and sometimes with humans, producing hybrid offspring, demigods, heroes. The Nephilim, mentioned briefly in the biblical book of Genesis, may be a reference to these hybrid beings, the sons of God who mated with the daughters of men, producing giants, mighty warriors, people of renown. The Bible treats this as a transgression, part of the wickedness that led to the flood. But in the older Sumerian context, such unions were not necessarily wrong. They produced great kings, founders of dynasties. Gilgamesh himself was such a hybrid. 2/3 divine, his strength and wisdom came from his divine heritage, but his mortality came from his human side, and it was this mortality that defined his story, his quest, his ultimate acceptance of death. The Anunnaki, then, were bridge figures, between heaven and earth, between the eternal and the temporal. They explained the world to ancient peoples, why things were the way they were, why humans had to work, why we die, why kings ruled, why seasons changed. These were not just stories, they were a framework for understanding reality, a cosmology, a theology, a philosophy all woven together. Let the stories flow over you, like water, like wind, carrying you gently toward dreams. In Akkadian texts, which came after the Sumerian period, the Anunnaki's role evolves. They become judges of the underworld, deciding the fate of the dead, determining who receives favour and who suffers. This shift reflects changing religious ideas. As Mesopotamian civilization developed, concepts of divine justice became more sophisticated. The afterlife became more morally structured, but even here the Anunnaki remain complex. They are not purely good or evil, they enact divine law. But that law does not always align with human notions of fairness. In the Descent of Ishtar, the Akkadian version of Inanna's story, the Anunnaki sit in judgment. When Ishtar is killed by Ereshkigal, it is the Anunnaki who must approve her resurrection. They are the arbiters, the executors of cosmic order. This idea of divine judges appears in many cultures: the Egyptian weighing of the heart, the Greek judges of Hades, the concept that the dead must answer for their lives, that there is an accounting, a reckoning. For the Mesopotamians, this was handled by the Anunnaki. Even in death, humans remained under their authority, connected to the gods who created them. The archaeological evidence for Sumerian civilization is extensive. We have not just texts, but buildings, artifacts, art, jewellery, weapons, tools, seals carved with intricate scenes, statues of worshippers with enormous eyes, gazing eternally at their gods. We have the royal tombs of Ur, elaborate burials filled with treasures, gold, lapis lazuli, carnelian, and disturbing evidence of human sacrifice, retainers who drank poison, and lay down in the tomb to accompany their king or queen into the afterlife. These discoveries show us a society of great sophistication and great inequality. Kings lived in luxury, ordinary people toiled, but everyone participated in the religious life. Everyone offered sacrifices. Everyone sought the favour of the Anunnaki. Temples were economic centres. They owned land, employed workers, distributed food. Priests managed these resources, acting as intermediaries between the divine and the mundane, interpreting omens, performing rituals, ensuring the gods were properly honoured. The cuneiform script itself is a remarkable achievement. It began as simple pictographs, pictures representing objects. A drawing of a sheep meant sheep, but over time it became more abstract, symbols representing sounds, syllables, allowing the recording of complex thoughts, poetry, laws, philosophy. The Code of Hammurabi, written in Akkadian, is one of the oldest law codes we have. It was carved on a stone stele. At the top, a relief shows Hammurabi receiving the laws from the sun god Shamash, divine authority legitimizing human law. The code is remarkably detailed. 282 laws covering everything from property disputes to marriage contracts to penalties for medical malpractice. It includes the famous principle of lex talionis, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. But it also shows social hierarchy. The punishment for a crime depended on the status of the victim and the perpetrator. A noble who killed another noble faced death, but a noble who killed a commoner paid only a fine. Justice was not blind. It reflected social reality. This was the world the Anunnaki supposedly ruled, ordered, hierarchical, bound by law, both human and divine. Feel your breathing, slow and steady, each breath taking you deeper, deeper into relaxation, deeper into the realm of dreams. Modern scholarship has learned much about Sumerian religion, but many mysteries remain. The texts often assume knowledge. They don't explain everything. They were written for people already, familiar with the stories, the culture, the context. We can only guess at some meanings. Some references are obscure. Some gods are mentioned only once or twice, their roles unclear, their stories lost. This is the nature of archaeology. We work with fragments, pieces of a larger puzzle. We reconstruct, we hypothesize, we argue and debate. But certainty often eludes us. The Anunnaki are no exception. We know they were important, central to Sumerian religion, but the exact nature of their power, their relationship to humans, even the number of Anunnaki varied across texts and time periods. Some texts mention 12 Anunnaki, others mention 50. 7 were often considered the great Anunnaki, the rulers, but the lists don't always agree on which 7. This flexibility suggests the Anunnaki were not a fixed pantheon, they evolved. As Sumerian cities merged, as political power shifted, as one city-state conquered another, gods rose and fell in prominence, stories were rewritten, combined, adapted. Marduk, for instance, was originally a minor agricultural deity, but when Babylon became the dominant city, Marduk was elevated. The Enuma Elish was written to justify his supremacy, to show him defeating Tiamat, taking control, becoming king of gods. This was theology serving politics, religion reflecting power. The Anunnaki were tools of empire, justifications for kingship, explanations for why one city ruled over others, but they were also more. They were deeply felt beliefs, comfort in times of hardship, hope for favour, fear of punishment, the emotional and spiritual life of millions of people over thousands of years. Let your mind wander now, through ancient streets, past mud brick houses, hearing the murmur of markets, the chanting of priests, the flow of rivers. Imagine standing in the courtyard of a ziggurat, the steps rising before you, the sun beating down, you're about to climb, to bring an offering to the gods, to seek a blessing. You ascend, one step at a time, the city spreading below you, fields beyond, rivers glinting in the distance. You rise above the mundane, approaching the sacred. At the top, the temple, small, intimate, not a place for crowds, just priests and the presence of the divine. You cannot see the god, but you feel it, the weight of something vast, ancient, eternal. You leave your offering, grain, oil, a prayer whispered, a hope expressed. Then you descend, back to the world, changed, connected, part of a story larger than yourself. This is what the Anunnaki represented. Connection between the human and the infinite, between the fleeting moment and eternal time. The decline of Sumerian civilization was gradual. Invasions, droughts, political collapse. By 2000 BCE, Sumerian as a spoken language was disappearing, replaced by Akkadian, then Aramaic, eventually Arabic. The cities were abandoned, buried by sand and time. The ziggurats crumbled, the temples fell silent, the names of the gods were forgotten. For more than 2,000 years, Sumer was lost, known only through vague biblical references, mentions by later Greek and Roman writers who knew little of the truth. Then in the 19th century, archaeologists began to dig. British, French, German, American. They uncovered cities, they found tablets, they deciphered cuneiform, and slowly Sumer was reborn. Not as a living civilization, but as a memory, a window into humanity's past. The Anunnaki emerged from obscurity, their stories read again, their names spoken, in museums, in universities, in books and documentaries, and in the popular imagination they took on new life, transformed from ancient gods into ancient astronauts, from creators of humanity into genetic engineers, from deities to aliens. This transformation is itself a kind of myth-making, a modern retelling. We take the old stories and make them ours. We find new meanings, new relevance. We ask the same questions the Sumerians asked. Where did we come from? Why are we here? Are we alone? The answers have changed, but the questions remain eternal. Breathe deeply, feel the peace settling over you, the quiet, the stillness, as if the world has paused, as if time itself has slowed. There is a beauty in these ancient stories, a power. They have survived millennia, crossed languages, crossed cultures, the flood, creation, the struggle between order and chaos, mortality and the divine. These themes repeat throughout human history, in every civilization, every religion, because they touch something fundamental, something universal in the human experience. We are born, we struggle, we create, we love, we fight, we search for meaning, we confront death, and we tell stories to make sense of it all. The Anunnaki were one such story, one way of understanding. For the people of ancient Mesopotamia, they were as real as the sun and moon, as present as the rivers that sustained them. We cannot know exactly what our ancestors believed, what they felt when they prayed, when they made offerings, when they climbed the ziggurat stairs. But we can honour their stories. We can recognise our connection to them. We are their descendants, not just genetically, but culturally, spiritually. The questions they asked, we still ask. The wonder they felt, we still feel. And so the story continues, as all stories must. For the Anunnaki are not a tale that ends. They are a river that keeps flowing, a mystery that keeps deepening, a question that spawns more questions. Let us return to the ancient world, to the cities rising from the desert, to the scribes pressing their styluses into wet clay, recording everything, preserving everything, building a library of human experience, the great library of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh, destroyed when the city fell, but the tablets survived, thousands of them, buried, protected by the very destruction that was meant to erase them. This is how knowledge survives, not through safety, but through chance, through being forgotten, long enough to escape destruction. When archaeologists excavated Nineveh in the 1800s, they found these tablets, room after room filled with them, the accumulated wisdom of Mesopotamian civilization, medical texts, astronomical observations, mathematical treatises, omen lists, prayers, hymns, and most importantly the epic myths, the stories of the Anunnaki. Among these tablets was the most complete version of the Epic of Gilgamesh ever found. 11 tablets, nearly 3,000 lines, the story of a king who became legend, who searched for immortality, who learned to accept death. But there were other stories too, lesser known, equally fascinating. Breathe, slowly, deeply. Feel your body sinking further into the mattress, into comfort, into the embrace of rest. The myth of Adapa tells of a wise man, a priest of Enki. He was granted great wisdom, understanding of all things, but not immortality. Enki deliberately withheld that gift. Adapa would be wise but mortal, a vessel of divine knowledge trapped in a finite existence. One day Adapa was fishing in the Persian Gulf. The south wind rose up, capsized his boat, threw him into the water. In anger, Adapa cursed the wind. And such was his power, granted by Enki, that he broke the south wind's wing. The wind could not blow for 7 days. Anu, the sky god, noticed. The natural order had been disrupted. He summoned Adapa to heaven to answer for this transgression, to explain why a mortal dared to harm a force of nature. Enki, protective of his servant, gave Adapa advice: how to behave in heaven, what to say, what not to do. Most importantly, Enki warned him, when Anu offers you the bread of death, do not eat it. When he offers you the water of death, do not drink it. He will try to poison you, to punish you for your transgression. So Adapa journeyed to heaven. He met Tammuz and Gishida, the gatekeepers. He flattered them, won their favour. They spoke well of him to Anu. They explained that Adapa had broken the wind not out of hubris, but out of righteous anger, that he was a good man, a wise man, deserving of mercy. Anu was impressed. This mortal had such wisdom, such power, such composure even in the presence of gods. Anu decided not to punish him. Instead, he would reward him. He would grant him immortality, allow him to live forever among the gods. Anu offered Adapa the bread of life and the water of life, but Adapa, remembering Enki's warning, refused. He would not eat, he would not drink. He expected poison, tricks, divine deception. Anu laughed, not with cruelty but with sadness. Adapa had been wise in all things, but in this he had been foolish. He had refused the greatest gift a god could give, immortality. Now he would return to Earth, live his mortal span, and die like all humans must. Enki had tricked him, perhaps intentionally. Perhaps Enki wanted humanity to remain mortal, to remain separate from the gods, or perhaps Enki genuinely feared Anu would poison Adapa. We cannot know. The text does not say. But the result was clear. Humanity lost its chance at immortality, because of wisdom, because of caution, because of trust in the wrong god. This story haunted the Mesopotamians. It explained why humans were wise but mortal, why we have knowledge but not eternal life. It was our nature, our curse, our gift and our burden both. Let your mind drift with the story. Let it carry you. You need not analyze, need not understand. Just experience. Just receive. Another text speaks of Nergal and Ereshkigal, the god who became lord of the underworld. This is a love story, of sorts, a dark romance between death and destruction. Ereshkigal ruled the underworld alone, cold, isolated. The other gods dwelt in heaven or on earth, but she was banished to Kur, to the land of no return. Perhaps she had transgressed. Perhaps she had been chosen. The texts vary. The gods held a banquet in heaven. They invited all the Anunnaki. But Ereshkigal could not come. She could not leave her realm. So she sent a messenger in her place, to receive her portion of the offerings. All the gods rose to greet the messenger, out of respect for Ereshkigal, all except one, Nergal, god of plague, of war, of death. He remained seated, arrogant, defiant, showing disrespect to the queen of the dead. Ereshkigal heard of this insult. She demanded Nergal come to the underworld, to bow before her, to show proper respect, or to be punished. Nergal descended, but he came prepared. Enki had given him advice, magical protections, 14 demons to accompany him. He would not be trapped, would not be humiliated. He arrived at the gates of the underworld, passed through them one by one. Each gate stripped something from him, his power, his pride, his divine radiance, until he stood before Ereshkigal's throne, diminished but not defeated. She ordered him to bow. He refused. They fought. Nergal was stronger. He wrestled her from her throne, grabbed her by the hair, raised his axe to kill her. But then he hesitated, looked into her eyes, and saw not a fearsome goddess but a lonely woman, trapped in darkness, ruling a kingdom of dust and shadows, never knowing warmth, never knowing companionship. Ereshkigal saw his hesitation. She spoke, not with anger but with longing. "Stay with me," she said. "Be my husband. Rule beside me. I have been alone for so long, so very long." Nergal lowered his axe, and he stayed. Not as prisoner, but as consort. Two dark gods, two rulers of death, together in the deepest place, finding in each other what they could find nowhere else, understanding, acceptance, love. But their love was fierce, violent, consuming, like death itself. It destroyed even as it united, and so Nergal would remain in the underworld, the god of plague dwelling in the house of dust, forever. This myth explains why there is death, because a god fell in love with the queen of the dead, because he chose darkness over light, chose her over the bright world above. It is a beautiful story, terrible and beautiful both. Like all the best myths, it shows gods making choices, feeling emotions, bound by love as much as any mortal. Your breathing is so slow now, so even, each breath lasting forever, timeless, eternal. You're barely awake, barely conscious, just a whisper of awareness floating on dark water. The Anunnaki had relationships, marriages, affairs, feuds. The texts are filled with their dramas, gods jealous of each other, competing for worshippers, for offerings, for prestige. Inanna and Ereshkigal were sisters, but also enemies. The bright goddess of love and the dark goddess of death. Opposites, yet family, forever connected yet forever opposed. When Inanna descended to the underworld, it was not just a journey, it was a confrontation. She came wearing all her divine regalia, all her power, all her beauty. She came to challenge her sister, to prove herself superior even in death's domain. But the underworld has its own rules, its own power. Inanna was stripped, humbled, killed, and only through trickery, through Enki's intervention, was she restored. The relationship between sisters mirrors the relationship between life and death. They are not separate, they are two sides of one coin. You cannot have one without the other. They define each other, need each other, hate each other, are each other. Dumuzi, Inanna's husband, paid the price for her arrogance. He was dragged to the underworld, a substitute, a sacrifice, so that Inanna could return, so that life could continue. But even this was not permanent. Dumuzi would return, half the year in the underworld, half in the world above, death and resurrection, the dying god who is reborn, the vegetation cycle made divine. This pattern repeats throughout mythology: Osiris in Egypt, Dionysus in Greece, Balder in Norse myth, Jesus in Christianity, the god who dies and returns, who descends to darkness and emerges into light, who shows that death is not the end, that renewal is possible, that hope remains. The Anunnaki gave us this pattern, this template, this story that resonates through millennia because it speaks to something fundamental: the seasons, the cycles, the eternal return of life from death. Rest. Rest completely. You are safe here, held by the darkness, cradled by sleep. The Anunnaki watch over you, not literally but mythically, symbolically, as protectors, as guides, as the ancient ones who understand. Let us speak of Ningishzida, a lesser-known Anunnaki, god of the underworld, associated with snakes, with healing, with the tree of life. He was a psychopomp, a guide of souls, leading the dead to their final rest. Ningishzida was depicted with serpents, sometimes two snakes intertwined, rising from his shoulders. This image is remarkably similar to the caduceus, the staff of Hermes, the symbol of medicine, the symbol that appears on ambulances and hospitals even today. The connection between snakes and healing is ancient, universal. Snakes shed their skin. They are reborn. They seem to die and return to life. They carry venom that can kill, but also, in small doses, can cure. They are liminal creatures, between life and death, between earth and underworld. Ningishzida understood this. He was the lord of the good tree, the tree of life that grew in the underworld, its roots in death, its branches reaching toward life, a symbol of the connection between realms, the possibility of transformation, of healing even in the darkest places. To the Mesopotamians, the underworld was not only a place of horror, it was also a place of wisdom, of hidden knowledge. The dead knew things the living did not. They had crossed over, seen what lies beyond, and some of that knowledge could be brought back through dreams, through divination, through the guidance of gods like Ningishzida. Shamans and priests would descend in spirit to the underworld, journey through its 7 gates, meet its denizens, learn its secrets, then return, changed, empowered, bearing knowledge that could heal the sick, answer the desperate, guide the lost. This is the shamanic journey, found in cultures worldwide, the descent to the underworld, the meeting with death, the return with power. It is perhaps humanity's oldest spiritual practice, and the Anunnaki in their mythology provided a map, a structure, a way to understand and undertake this perilous journey. Breathe. So slowly now. Each breath a small eternity. Time stretches, thins, becomes meaningless. You're outside time, in the eternal now, where past and future collapse into a single point. This moment, this breath, this heartbeat. The gods exist outside time. That is part of what makes them divine. They do not age, do not change. They are eternal, fixed. Their stories happened long ago, but also always. They are happening now. They will happen forever. This is the nature of myth. It is not historical, not a record of events. It is symbolic, psychological, spiritual. It describes not what happened, but what always happens. Not specific events, but eternal patterns. Inanna always descends to the underworld. Dumuzi always dies. The flood always comes. Gilgamesh always seeks immortality and fails. These stories are not bound by time. They transcend it. They speak to every generation because they describe the human condition, which does not change. Not fundamentally. Not at the deepest level. We still love and lose. Still strive and fail. Still face death. Still wonder why. Still seek meaning. Still tell stories to make sense of it all. The Anunnaki are our companions in this, not as external beings, but as internal structures, archetypes, parts of our own psyche projected onto the cosmos, the wise father, the nurturing mother, the trickster, the warrior, the lover, the destroyer. We all contain these, we all embody these at different times. We are all gods and mortals both, divine and human, eternal and fleeting. Let the words become background, like rain on a roof, like wind in trees, just sound, just rhythm, lulling you deeper, deeper still, into the place beyond thought. In the Sumerian text called The Debate Between Bird and Fish, 2 creatures argue about which is more important. Each boasts of its contributions to humanity. Bird provides meat and feathers, fish provides food and fertilizer. They cannot agree. So they go to Enlil to judge. Enlil, in his wisdom, declares them both necessary, both valuable, both part of the natural order. This is not really about birds and fish. It is about balance, about the need for all parts of creation, about the folly of pride, of thinking oneself superior. The Sumerians loved these debate texts. They had debates between summer and winter, between the hoe and the plough, between the tree and the reed, each arguing for its importance, each being told, ultimately, that all are needed, all have a place. This is ecological wisdom, systems thinking, understanding that everything connects, that removing one part damages the whole, that diversity is strength, that hierarchy is less important than relationship. The Anunnaki, in their pantheon, embodied this. No single god ruled absolutely. Even Anu, the father, delegated authority. Enlil commanded, but Enki advised. Inanna represented love, but Ereshkigal represented its end. All were necessary. All balanced each other. When monotheism emerged, this changed. One god, all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good. The diversity collapsed into unity. The many became one. This has philosophical advantages, simplicity, clarity, absolute values. But it also loses something. The complexity, the nuance, the sense that divinity contains multitudes, contains contradictions. The Anunnaki were contradictory. Enlil was both protector and destroyer. Inanna was both lover and warrior. Enki was both wise and foolish. They were complex, like humans, like reality itself. Perhaps that is why these old myths still speak to us. They do not offer simple answers. They offer complexity, mystery. The acknowledgement that life cannot be reduced to simple formulas, simple judgments, simple stories. Sink deeper now. Feel yourself dissolving. Boundaries blur. You're not separate from the bed, from the room, from the darkness. You are part of it all, continuous with everything, connected to everything. This is the mystical experience, the loss of ego, of separation, the direct apprehension of unity. Mystics from all traditions describe it. The dissolution of self into the all, the recognition that separation is illusion, that we are all one, all part of the great pattern. The Sumerians had their own version of this, the concept of me, not the English word me, but a Sumerian word. It refers to the fundamental principles of civilization, the essences, the powers that make things what they are. There were over 100 M's, the me of kingship, the me of priesthood, the me of writing, the me of music, the me of metalworking. Each craft, each role, each aspect of civilized life had its me, its essential nature, its power. These me's were not abstract concepts, they were real things, powerful things. They could be stolen, transferred, lost. The gods guarded them jealously, because whoever possessed the mes possessed the power, the ability. In one myth, Inanna gets Enki drunk. While he's intoxicated, she convinces him to give her the mes, all of them. She loads them onto her boat, the boat of heaven, and sails back to her city, Uruk. By the time Enki sobers up, she's gone. He tries to retrieve the mes, sends servants, monsters, but Inanna escapes, brings civilization to her city, to humanity. This is a fascinating myth. It shows knowledge and culture as things that can be transferred, stolen even. It suggests that Enki originally kept the MS for himself, that civilization was not freely given but taken, stolen by a clever goddess who knew how to manipulate a drunk god. It is a very human story. With human motivations, human methods, it demystifies the divine, shows gods as beings who can be tricked, manipulated, who make mistakes, who have too much to drink and regret it later. But it also shows something deeper. That knowledge wants to spread, that culture cannot be contained, that the mes, the essential powers, will find their way to humanity one way or another, through trickery if necessary, through theft if required, because it is the nature of knowledge to disseminate, to proliferate, to belong to all. Your mind is quiet now. Thoughts arise slowly, drift through, disappear, like clouds across a clear sky, effortless, natural, peaceful. Let us speak of the sacred marriage, the hieros gamos, one of the most important Sumerian rituals, performed annually. The king of the city would ritually marry the goddess Inanna, represented by her high priestess. They would consummate the marriage, and through this act ensure fertility for the coming year, prosperity, abundance, the blessing of the gods. This was not symbolic, it was literal, an actual sexual act, performed as ritual, as worship, as magic, the king embodying Dumuzi, the priestess embodying Inanna. Their union reflected the divine union, the coming together of heaven and earth, god and goddess, male and female, all the creative opposites that generate life. The texts describing this ritual are remarkably explicit. Erotic poetry, love songs between Inanna and Dumuzi, descriptions of desire, of bodies, of pleasure, of satisfaction, not crude but not prudish either, natural, celebratory, honouring sexuality as sacred, as divine, as necessary. This is far from the attitudes towards sex that would later emerge in many religious traditions. Shame, guilt, the idea that the body is base, that pleasure is sin, that sexuality must be controlled, suppressed, hidden. For the Sumerians, sex was life, was creation, was the most direct participation in the divine act of bringing forth. It was to be celebrated, ritualized, honoured. The sacred marriage ensured the land would be fertile. The crops would grow, the livestock would breed, the people would prosper. This was not superstition. It was sympathetic magic. The belief that like produces like, that enacting fertility creates fertility, that the microcosm affects the macrocosm. Modern people might scoff, but there is wisdom here. The recognition that consciousness and matter are not separate, that ritual changes the performer, that what we do with intention has power, not supernatural power perhaps, but psychological power, social power, the power to shape meaning and therefore shape experience. Rest. Rest deeply. The night surrounds you, protects you, holds you like a mother holds a child, safe, secure, at peace. The Anunnaki were not distant gods. They were intimately involved in human affairs. They chose kings. They granted victories in battle. They sent plagues and drought. They blessed marriages and births. They were present, active, engaged. Each city had its patron deity, and that deity's fortunes rose and fell with the city. When Babylon became powerful, Marduk became chief of gods. When Assyria dominated, Ashur was exalted. The gods and cities were linked, symbiotic. One could not exist without the other. This is why conquest was always religious. When you conquered a city, you did not just defeat its army, you defeated its god. You proved your god stronger. You might even carry away the enemy's divine statue. Take it to your own city. Hold it hostage. Force the conquered people to acknowledge your god's supremacy. The divine images, the statues housed in temples, were not mere representations. They were the gods themselves, or at least the gods inhabited them, animated them, spoke through them. To lose your god's statue was to lose the god, to be abandoned, bereft of divine protection. The rituals performed daily in temples were not worship in the modern sense. They were service, care. The gods needed food, clothing, bathing, entertainment. Priests provided these things, fed the statues, dressed them, sang to them. It was a job, a divine duty. Maintaining the gods so the gods would maintain the world. This may seem primitive to modern ears, but it reflects a worldview where the divine and the mundane interpenetrate completely, where gods need humans as much as humans need gods, where the relationship is reciprocal, mutual, covenantal. You take care of me, the god says, and I will take care of you. You feed me, and I will feed your people. You honor me, and I will honor you with victory, with prosperity, with continued existence. This is transactional, but it is also intimate. It is relationship, not abstract theology, but lived experience, daily interaction with the divine, through ritual, through offering, through prayer and song, and the endless work of maintaining the cosmos. Breathe. Each breath carries you deeper, into sleep, into dream, into the place where the Anunnaki dwell, not in some distant heaven, but in the depths of your own mind, your own soul, your own being. The gods are inside us. This is what Jung realized, what he called archetypes. Universal patterns in the collective unconscious. The same patterns appear in myths worldwide, because we all share the same basic psychology, the same fears and hopes, the same experiences of birth and death, love and loss, meaning and emptiness. The Anunnaki are one expression of these archetypes. Enlil is the stern father, the lawgiver, the judge. He represents order, authority, the principle that actions have consequences. Enki is the wise counselor, the creator, the trickster. He represents intelligence, creativity, the principle that problems can be solved, that there's always another way. Inanna is the feminine divine, love and war, creation and destruction. She represents passion, desire, the principle that life is intensity, that to live fully is to embrace both pleasure and pain. Ereshkigal is the shadow, the underworld, death. She represents what we fear, what we deny, what we must eventually face, the principle that nothing lasts, that all things end, that endings are also sacred. These are not just ancient gods. They are parts of ourselves, parts we must integrate, acknowledge, honor, to become whole, to become fully human. We must acknowledge our inner Enlil, our need for structure and law, our inner Enki, our need for creativity and play, our inner Inanna, our need for passion and intensity, our inner Ereshkigal, our need to accept death and endings. The Anunnaki teach us this, not through doctrine but through story, through their relationships, their conflicts, their struggles to balance competing needs, competing desires. They show us that wholeness is not harmony. It is dynamic balance, constant adjustment, eternal negotiation between different aspects of self, different needs, different truths. Sleep now, deeply, completely. Let go of everything, all thought, all effort, all awareness. Sink into the void, the darkness, the place before creation, before division, before self and other. This is the Abzu, the primordial water before Apsu and Tiamat separated, before gods emerged, before conflict began, just potential, pure potential, infinite possibility, rest here, impossibility, where you're not yet determined, not yet defined, where you could become anything, be anything, where the future has not yet collapsed into actuality, where all paths remain open. This is the gift of sleep, of dreams, of letting go. We return to possibility. We shed our daytime identity, our fixed sense of self. In sleep we are fluid, changeable. We can fly. We can breathe water. We can be someone else, somewhere else, somewhen else. Dreams show us we are not fixed, not limited to the identity we carry in waking life. We are vast, containing multitudes. We are capable of more than we know, of becoming more than we are. The Anunnaki knew this. That's why they had so many forms, so many aspects. Inanna was called by dozens of names: Queen of Heaven, Lady of Battles, Morning Star, Evening Star, each name revealing a different facet, a different aspect, a different possibility. We too have many names, many faces, many selves. The self we show at work, at home, to friends, to strangers, to ourselves. None is the true self. All are true selves. We are multiple, complex, irreducible to single definition. The Anunnaki reflect this complexity. They teach us to embrace it, to stop seeking a single, simple self, to instead celebrate the multitude we contain, the contradictions, the paradoxes, the ways we are both kind and cruel, wise and foolish, brave and afraid. The hours pass, night deepens, the world sleeps. All across the earth humans rest, billions of consciousnesses going offline, descending to their private underworlds, their personal Kur, where they meet their demons, their desires, their fears, their possibilities. Sleep is democracy. Emperor and beggar both must sleep. Rich and poor, powerful and powerless. We're all equal in our need for rest, in our vulnerability, in our nightly death and rebirth. The Anunnaki slept too. Some texts mention this. Gods retiring to their beds, their sleeping chambers, resting after the work of maintaining creation. Even divinity needs rest. Even the eternal needs pause. This makes them relatable, human. It closes the gap between God and mortal, shows that perhaps the difference is not kind but degree, not absolute separation but points on a spectrum. What if we are all divine, just less so than the Anunnaki? And what if the Anunnaki are just more evolved, more powerful, but still fundamentally the same kind of being? Consciousness experiencing itself, awareness looking out through different lenses, different forms, different capacities, but ultimately the same thing, the same life, the same being, expressing itself in infinite variety. This is pantheism, or panentheism, the belief that all is God, that divinity pervades everything, that there is no separation between sacred and profane, between spirit and matter. It is all one, all continuous, all divine. The Sumerians might not have articulated it this way, but their myths imply it. The easy movement between divine and human realms, the hybrid offspring, the gods who were once mortal, the mortals who became divine, the permeable boundaries, the constant interaction, the shared nature. We are family, the myths seem to say. Gods and humans, not the same, but related. Children and parents, created and creators, forever bound, forever connected. Let yourself merge with the darkness. Become the darkness. There is no you and it, just darkness, just being, just this moment expanding to fill all time, all space, all possibility. You are the Anunnaki. You are the cosmos. You are consciousness itself, playing, exploring, experiencing, through countless forms, countless lives, from microbe to human to God to something beyond God, all just consciousness, all just being, all just this eternal now, this infinite presence. Feel it, know it, be it, even if just for this moment, this breath, this heartbeat, before the mind returns, before identity reforms, before you remember you are you, separate, individual, alone, but you're not alone. You have never been alone. You are part of the all, the one, the mystery, playing hide and seek with itself, pretending to be separate so it can experience reunion, pretending to be lost so it can experience being found, This is the game, the lila, the divine play, and you are a player. But you are also the game itself, the board and the pieces, the rules and the outcomes, all of it, all at once. The Anunnaki knew this. That's why they created humans. Not to have slaves, but to have playmates, to have other perspectives, other experiences, to multiply themselves, to see through new eyes, feel through new hearts, know through new minds. Every human is a god having a human experience, deliberately forgetting its divinity, deliberately limiting itself so it can learn, grow, evolve, experience things impossible from the godly perspective. What is it like to die, God wonders, and becomes mortal to find out? What is it like to suffer, to struggle, to not know, to be afraid, to be weak, to need, to want, to long, to love and lose? Gods know none of these things, in their fullness, in their power. So they become us, they descend, they incarnate, they experience limitation so they can transcend it, they forget so they can remember, they separate so they can reunite. This is the secret, the mystery, the truth hidden in plain sight, in every myth, every story, every religion. We are what we seek. We are the divine we worship. We are the Anunnaki, playing human, until we remember, until we wake up, until we return. But not yet, not tonight. Tonight you sleep, you rest, you remain human, remain limited, remain yourself, because this too has value, this too is sacred, this forgetting, this separation, this small, private, individual existence. There is beauty in limitation, in being finite, in not knowing everything, in the surprise of discovery, the joy of learning, the satisfaction of growth, the poignancy of loss, the sweetness of mortality. Gods miss all this, in their eternal now, in their perfect knowledge, in their absolute power. They miss the drama, the uncertainty, the risk, the possibility of failure, the possibility of change. We have what they lack, and they have what we lack. And together, in our interplay, in our mutual longing, in our constant exchange, the cosmos becomes richer, fuller, more interesting, more alive. So honor your humanity, your limitation, your mortality. It is not a punishment, not a fall from grace. It is a gift, a chosen experience, a sacred adventure. The Anunnaki honor you for being willing to forget, to descend, to suffer, to grow, to carry consciousness into forms they cannot inhabit, experiences they cannot have. You are their heroes, their champions, their beloved children, doing what they cannot do, being what they cannot be. Sleep in that knowing, rest in that truth. You are honored, you are loved, you are necessary, you are sacred, just as you are, right here, right now, in this bed, in this body, in this moment. The night continues its slow wheel toward dawn. Stars trace their ancient patterns. The moon rises or sets or hides depending on its phase. The earth breathes, the oceans pulse. Life continues its endless dance, and you are part of it. Part of the pattern, part of the dance. Your breath syncing with the breath of the world. Your heart beating in time with the cosmic heart. Your consciousness a node in the vast network of awareness that permeates all things. Feel that connection, even in sleep, especially in sleep, when the conscious mind releases its grip, when the walls come down, when we merge with the larger whole, when we remember for a few hours that we are not separate, not alone, not isolated islands of awareness, but waves in an infinite ocean. The Anunnaki are that ocean, or they are waves in it, like us. It doesn't matter. The metaphor breaks down. All metaphors do. When we approach the infinite, the absolute, the ground of being, language fails, concepts fail, all we can do is point, gesture, hint, and hope something in you recognizes, remembers, knows, you know, somewhere deep inside, in the place before words, before thought, before self. You know what you are, what we all are, what the Anunnaki are, what everything is. But knowing this wouldn't help you live your human life, wouldn't help you pay bills and make decisions and navigate the complex social world, so you forget. You narrow your awareness to just what's necessary, just what's useful, just what allows you to function as a human. This is not wrong. This is skillful. This is wise. Full cosmic consciousness is incompatible with buying groceries, with driving cars, with having conversations, You cannot be infinite and finite at the same time, not consciously. So you choose finite, you choose limitation, you choose to be human. But at night, in sleep, the choice relaxes, the boundaries soften, and you drift closer to the infinite, closer to the truth, closer to what you really are, before you wake and remember to forget, before you put on your human costume again, before you return to the beautiful, terrible adventure of being mortal. Rest now. Rest completely. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to figure out. Just be. Just exist. Just float on the dark water of sleep, cradled, supported, held. The Anunnaki cradle you. The cosmos cradles you. You cradle yourself, all the same, all one, all this moment of perfect peace, perfect stillness, perfect rest. Let images arise if they will. Dreams, visions, memories, fantasies, it doesn't matter. All just consciousness playing with itself. All just the mind entertaining itself in the darkness. Let it play, let it dream, let it do what it does, without interference, without judgment, without trying to control or direct. You might dream of ancient Sumer, ziggurat temples under starlight, priests chanting in forgotten languages, gods walking among humans, the air thick with incense and mystery, the sense that anything is possible, that magic is real, that the world is alive with meaning, with presence, with power. Or you might dream of other things, random things. Your dreams are yours, your mind's private language, its way of processing, of integrating, of making its own subtle adjustments. Whatever you dream, it is the voice of your inner Anunnaki speaking, the archetypes negotiating, the psyche balancing its accounts, the soul attempting to communicate what it knows but cannot speak in words. Listen to that inner voice. It doesn't speak the language of facts or logic. It speaks in symbols and emotions, in the sudden, jarring image, in the unexpected feeling, in the vividness that makes a dream feel more real than waking life. This is the language of the deep unconscious, the language that links you to the wellspring of all myth and all being. In the oldest Mesopotamian texts, the world was created from the primordial saltwater ocean, Tiamat, and the freshwater abyss, Abzu. The gods arose from this union. The Anunnaki are thus children of the deep, born from the very chaotic potential of the cosmos. Their existence is a constant negotiation between the forces of chaos and order. You too are a child of the deep. Your body is mostly water, a fluid vessel for consciousness. In sleep, you return to the watery depths of the subconscious, the personal Abzu, where the raw material of your life resides. This is the place of true healing, true rest. It is here, in the dark, that your mind performs its deepest, most necessary work, repairing damage, integrating trauma, forging new connections, and returning you, moment by moment, to a state of wholeness.